Hey guys! Recently I put up a picture on my Instagram and some of you asked me to show you how to edit it. So today I'm going to be showing you how I went from very flat, non-contrasting skin to skin that glows and looks natural and beautiful. So I'll be using this picture of Ariana. You can follow along with whichever picture you like. It should work on any photo that's flat, but it's going to be a bit different with every photo that you do it on. It's simple. Let me show you. So the first thing that we'll do, I'm in the develop module here, we'll select the adjustment brush. And you can see because she's backlit, I love the look of backlit photos, but sometimes it can give you that beautiful glow around the hair, but then leave the face kind of flat as far as lighting goes. So I'm going to be correcting that. We have the dodge lightning on. I don't want that. I don't actually want my exposure up. I'm going to select a brush that's large and soft, so you can do that here. You can adjust your size and your feathering to make it softer. And then I'll press O on my keyboard, and that's going to show you the mask. And I'm going to just brush over all of her skin. I like to work with multiple brushes and multiple layers in the brushes because it gives me more control and it ends up looking more natural. I'll go slowly for you since you're learning, but I found I can do this in just a few minutes now that I've kind of got the hang of it. You don't have to mask around clothes perfectly. These changes are very subtle and natural, so you won't see any abrupt artifacts from editing or anything like that. And I'll zoom in a bit. I'm using Control+. I'm using a Wacom tablet. I got a lot of questions about that. I love it because it gives me more control when I'm editing. And also I tend to get sore wrists when I use a mouse a lot and use small movements on a mouse. And this is just far more natural for me and more comfortable. And I feel I have more control. So if that's something you're interested in, I can put a link down below so that you can check it out for yourself. I've had mine for 7 years, so they last quite a while. Even though I use it as a placemat sometimes, and Tony's like, could you not? If you don't yet have Lightroom or Photoshop and would like to get better at editing your photos, you can go to SDP/Adobe Deal and get it there. I'll put the link down below for you. Okay, so I'll press O and I'll take off my mask. I haven't made any changes yet, but what I'll do is I'll go into this contrast slider here and I'm going to raise the contrast of the skin. Like I said, every photo is going to be different. Your lighting might be different. Your model's skin may be different. Your taste may be different. I'm going to just take you through what I do and adjust accordingly for your taste in your photo. I don't really like when people try to copy everything exactly to the T anyway. You do you, okay? So I'll press Y so you can see a before and after, and you can see already the skin has a bit more depth to it, more color, and it looks a bit glossier. Now I'll select New, and that will give me a new brush. And I have a custom brush here. The next thing that I'm going to do, I've already added more contrast to all of the skin. I want to do a little bit of almost dodging and burning, but I don't like adjusting the exposure too much. Instead, I'm going to be adjusting the highlights. So I will press O again, and I'm going to make my brush bigger and still soft. And then something that I like to do is I just kind of squint a little bit so that I can see the natural highlights of someone's face. I don't like to fight that. And I just go over the naturally highlighted places. If you're someone that likes makeup and makeup tutorials, you're going to be naturally good at this because, like applying makeup, you're going to be selecting the appropriate places that should be highlighted. I have auto mask on, and do you see how this is kind of making like this funky, uneven selection? That's why. I don't want that. And my brush is a little bit hard right now. These selections are pretty rough. So I'll go into erase sometimes and just with a feathery big brush, I'll soften the transition. I'll press O to get rid of the mask, and then I'm going to raise the highlights. And I like to raise them a lot just to see how the edges would look if I did any extreme editing, and then I just dial it back once I think it looks good. And I like to do a quick before and after, press Y and just see where I started and where I'm ending up. I don't like my editing to look obvious. I don't want someone to look at my picture and think, oh, that looks really polished and photoshopped and fake. That's just not my personal taste. So I like to keep it very subtle and very natural. So now I'll go in and add another layer, select a new brush, and put the highlights up so we can see what we're doing, and we'll go in and touch up some of these finer details in her face. So we have, and you can go in and you can really select a lot of detail, but I'll move kind of quickly. So we'll get the highlights above her lips. And you can see if you do that squinting method I showed you before, you can see her nose has some natural highlights here and along the bottom. I like to get the bridge of her nose, even though you don't see them there. That's a nice place to add them, to add some depth and separate her nose from her face a little bit. And under the eyebrows, again, if you're familiar with makeup, these are all of the places you would be applying your makeup. And a little more on the cheekbones. And then, as I said, I'll just drag down the slider to make it more natural. And I like to press Y to just see a before and after and make sure it's not too artificial. And I do that again at the end of all my edits. I like to just walk away, grab a drink, take a walk around, come back and look at the screen and see if anything jumps out at me as unnatural or ugly. So again, let me press Y and do Control M dash. And you can already see that there's some depth and luminance to her skin. I'll press Y again, and now that I've brightened up her skin, I'm going to add some shadows. So again, a new brush. Let's make sure those highlights are down to 0, and I'll work in the shadows instead of in exposure. I think it looks better, it's more natural. They're darker now than I want them to be, but we can adjust that after. So you burn in the hairline. You can do the squint method again, get underneath these cheekbones, underneath the chin, separate the chin from the neck a little bit. This arm here, you can see that the light is very flat, so it looks just very one-dimensional. You can add some shadows. There's some natural shadows on her shoulder. And then you can define the nose more by adding some shadows to the side of the nose. And then I'll adjust that slider just to make it more subtle. And then the last thing that I like to do are the eyes. Huge mistake that I see all of the time is that people get a little bit lazy with the eyes and they just take a brush and go over the whole eye, brighten it up. It looks super creepy. You look like a White Walker from Game of Thrones. You don't want that. Take a little time. You can brighten the entire eye at first subtly. Let me press O again so you can see my mask. Let's raise the exposure just a little bit. Okay, this is way too much. But let's press O and see this mask so that we can see what we're doing. And we filled in the eyes. That's that White Walker look I was talking about. Not good. Not okay. So we raise the exposure just a tiny bit of the entire eye, and it can look a little bit unnatural unless you go in and you add more detail. So I'll show you what I do. I'll press New again and zoom in a lot, pressing the space bar to get this little hand and drag here. And with a small brush, do you see all these natural details in her eye? Wow, that's way too much. I'm actually going to bring up the highlights instead of the exposure. Follow all of the natural lines of your subject's iris. You don't have to add anything that's not there. Just go along with it. You can see these highlights in her eye. They're going to make her eyes look very sparkly. She has really cool eyes, actually. They look like they have flowers in them. And then we'll go over to the other eye and do the same thing. Just follow the natural grain and flow of the iris. Oh, you can see me. That's me. Okay. A new brush again, and then this time I'll bring down the shadows and I'll create some contrast in the eye. I like to get the ring around the eye and the pupil. I like that to be nice and dark. Let's take that mask off so we can make sure we're not doing too much. Go to the other eye here and hit that pupil again. Okay. And there's one other thing I want to do. I'm going to press O and then select these layers to make sure I have the right one. This one that does the entire eye, I want to add a tiny bit of clarity. And then I'm going to zoom out and press Y so I can see the difference. And you can see they don't look unnatural. They're just a tiny bit sparklier. There's a little more definition and they're a bit brighter. If you wanted to continue going with this kind of detail, you could go into the curls of the hair, the highlights of the hair. You could really get down and do more work than I've done. This is where I'm going to stop. And my next step would be to get rid of the side by side, and then at this point I would typically walk away for a little bit, do something else, look at other things, and come back. What I see here that I don't like is that there's a glariness to her skin a bit, so I would go select the brush again and press O for the mask so that I could find my appropriate layer. I think that got introduced when I did the highlights, so I'm going to bring down the highlights just a little bit. And I like to go in and just check all the layers and play with the sliders again and get things looking more natural. And then I always do the before and after. It's very subtle, you can see, but a lot of you like the glow that I got in my pictures, so that's how I did it. You can check out my Instagram. If you like more videos like these, click subscribe. And don't forget to turn the alerts on. Otherwise, YouTube just makes you forget about me. Thanks.